Craig Ripley here. Welcome once again to Living Off the Slab. Today what we're going to talk about are these things right here, motorcycle communication devices. So for me, the ones that I've been using since probably around 2010 are the Scala Riders from Cardo Systems. My wife and I first got the old Q2 multi-set, if you remember those, from around 2010, and those enabled you to just talk to one other person. So I could talk to my wife, but I couldn't really communicate to anybody outside of our two-person group, which was fine for us. We were just looking to be able to talk to each other, and it really helped to enhance our riding experience. We used those Q2 multi-sets for probably around 3 years, and then we decided that we wanted to upgrade. Cardo came out with the new G9, which is what this unit is right here, and then they have since come out with the G9X, which is just an upgrade on the same unit. And so we decided to switch over to that primarily because, one, our battery life was no longer lasting. It seemed like about 3 years was the life of the batteries in the old units. They just weren't holding a charge anymore. And then also these new units, the G9 and the G9X, they allowed you to communicate with more than two people. So the reason we wanted to be able to communicate with more than just the two of us is because we were doing a lot more riding in groups. We were going on tours with other couples, and also we were doing a lot more riding with my riding club. And so we wanted to help out on leading those rides and be able to communicate between the lead and the sweep rider. And for me, that's one of the really big benefits of using these communication devices, is that I do a lot of leading of the rides. I'm either the lead or oftentimes I'm the sweep. And we just found that when you get a big group, when you get 10 or 12 bikes, it's very hard to hold the group together, going through traffic situations, getting lost on roads that have a lot of curves. It's really tough to keep that group together and keep it cohesive if the lead rider and the tail rider cannot communicate with each other. As far as functionality goes on these units, they were a great improvement over the old multi-sets, right? Before, we just had the intercom system where we could communicate back and forth just between my wife and I. But these units open that up. They have an intercom now with an A and B channel on it where I can communicate and hook up with two people on a ride. Or there is this what they call a buddy system, where you can pre-program up to 8 additional units that you can communicate with. Now there's a little problem with that though, and I'll get into that in just a sec. So in addition to being able to link up to more than one rider, you also have Bluetooth capabilities that are built into this. So you can link up with your iPod, you can link up with your GPS, you can link up with your cell phone. Problem is you can only do one unit at a time, or one other device at a time. So if you wanted to listen to your GPS instructions, but you also wanted to be able to use your phone, what you had to do was link this unit to the GPS and then the GPS to your phone, because the GPS can link with more than one device at a time. So, and that would work sometimes. In addition, you have FM radio that you can listen to while you have your unit going, and also you have voice activated commands on here. Now, the voice activation, that sounds like a nice idea. It's hands-free. You can make the unit work without having to touch these buttons. Again, the problem is that it tended to be overly sensitive. So you might be talking to somebody else, and if you say something that sounds like the word radio, bam, the radio would come on. And you would then start yelling at it. You would say, radio off, or you would start hitting buttons trying to get it to stop, and there's just no way that you were able to get out of the cycle. This has happened to, well, everybody that I know on several occasions, and sometimes the only way to get it out of that cycle is to reboot the system. So again, that's another flaw in how these devices work. Now remember, I mentioned that there was some issues with that buddy system. Well, what ended up happening is that even though you could link your device up to 8 other riders, you could only talk to them one at a time. And if you were talking to one of them and somebody else in your pack needed to get a hold of you, well, you had no way of knowing that. There was no busy signal or a beep or anything that told you that somebody else was trying to get a hold of you. If you were talking to somebody else, again, everybody else was just locked out. So for me, what that ended up doing was making that buddy system pretty much useless. After trying it, for a few times and realizing that just wasn't going to work for us, we ended up just using the device with the intercom system, right? Because you can talk with 4 people, and we've even had 6 people linked up in line by using the intercom system. And that's how we do it when we're going out and we're leading rides, as I had mentioned earlier. I'll hook up, if I'm going to lead a ride, I'll hook up my sweep on channel A, and then I can still hook my wife up on channel B, and we can still all be involved in the conversation. And if the sweep rider also has a pillion that's riding with him, then he can also bring her into the conversation by hooking her up to his channel B. So in that way you get at least 4 people on, and if you keep daisy chaining it like that, you can actually get more people all on the intercom network. Now, one more thing that was a little bit of an issue with these devices is that they seem to work on line of sight, right? They have a mile range, which sounds like it should be more than enough for you if you're riding in a pack. But when we were out riding as a group, again, we get 10, 12, 15 bikes that are all riding together, and we get on some curvy road, and you get stretched out a little bit. Those curves in the road then kind of limits the range that you have on these devices. And if you did lose connection with your tail rider, then sometimes it was very difficult to get hooked back up again. You had to stop, let the group catch back up, and then reconnect the devices manually. Sometimes it would reconnect, sometimes it wouldn't. So another little tip on these things is always put your antenna up, even if you're just talking to the person on your rear saddle. It still just makes it better. It really makes it, if you're trying to talk to somebody else again, then maybe even 100 yards away, the antenna really makes a big difference. Right. So after I've given you all of these little issues that we have with these devices, you think that I really don't like them and I wouldn't recommend them, but that's actually not true. If I was going to give this a grade, an A to an F, I would give this probably a 75 and 80, so, C to a B range. There's about 20% that still needs some work, right? And those things that I was talking about. But once you get used to the quirks and you get used to how to hook these things up to each other and really use them, then they work quite well. So I wouldn't want to lead rides now without having them, or go out on a tour with my wife without having them. It just makes things so much more enjoyable. So again, are they perfect? No, but they're really good, and they make a big difference in being able to enjoy a ride. So now remember that we are taking that trip up to Alaska next year. And we're going to be using these communication devices. But I thought it might be a good idea to see if we can upgrade to the latest and greatest before we go, right? To see if we can get around some of these issues that we've always known about and always worked around with these older systems. So what we've gone to now is this new Scala Rider PackTalk from Cardo. Right, so here's the new PackTalk Duo, right? And here's the old G9X. Right, so you can see there's quite a bit of difference. This is a little bit bigger unit. It's not quite as long, but it's a little bit taller and wider. It's a little sleeker, right? Got a more modern, update to it. It also has fewer buttons on it, right? You can see all the buttons that are on this one, 3 across the front, 3 across the top. Well, this one's only got like 3 buttons on it. You can barely see them right here. And then, of course, this big roll button that lets you adjust the volume on it. So this is actually much simpler to use than the old systems. Now, the biggest reason why I wanted to switch to this new system is because of Cardo's new DMC network, or Dynamic Mesh Communication Network. Right, see, on the old networks back there, when you dropped off, as I mentioned before, you oftentimes had to manually reconnect whoever was dropped off. Well, with these, you're supposed to be able to join the network and leave the network and come back into it, and that's all supposed to now be seamless, right? It's a self-healing network. Right, and the more people you have on, if you have more than 4 people on the new network, well, that really extends the range. If you just have 2 people doing byte-to-byte communication, you can go up to a mile like the old systems. But if you have 4 people in, that extends the range up to 5 miles. Now, in total, you can have 15 riders all attached to this network at the same time. However, all 15 can't talk at the same time. You're limited to 6 people talking at a time, which I actually think that that's plenty. I mean, if 6 people are yammering and trying to have separate conversations, that doesn't sound like a good idea to me anyway. So while you can have 15 on here, you're going to limit the number of people who can talk, and I doubt that we'll ever get over that 6 person limit anyway. So in setting this unit up and starting to play with it, one of the great features that I find on this that I think is going to make life a lot easier is their voice activation on this unit. Right? As I mentioned previously, the voice activation is either on or off on the old units. If it's on, well, a lot of times you would say something and a command would kick off and you didn't mean for that command to get kicked off. Well, on this unit, the only way that your voice activation works is if you first tap this little bar here, the roller unit, right? If you tap that and then you hear a little beep and then you can speak your command, right? And I think that's great because now you can't make a mistake, right? You know that you're stopping your conversation and you're actually wanting the unit to perform an action. Now, in setting up this unit, when I first pick up the manual, well, I looked at it like, my eyes just glazed over. I'm like, oh my God, I'm never going to learn all this. But in actuality, when I sat down and I started setting it up and I started actually doing it, it actually was quite easy, much easier than the old system. Let me show you something else that Cardo has done that I think improves these new PackTalk units. And that is, this is the old mounting bracket for the G9X. Right? It's fairly heavy. And also it has this metal plate that is pinched up against your helmet by these 2 Allen screws right here. Okay, and depending upon the helmet you're putting it on, well, sometimes getting it up in there can be quite a chore, right? And on, like I have it mounted, I used to have it mounted to my Shoei RF1200 back there, and the way that the pads stick down underneath the RF1200, it was kind of difficult to get this in here. I actually had to leave one of the screws a little bit loose so that I could get it in there without damaging the pads. So the new system is much easier to get it into your helmet, right? This is no more screws. It's just a pinch type clamp that goes right in there. And they said it's much easier to get in there than this old, pinch and screw type unit. Another improvement is the way that the microphone attaches to the base. Right? In previous units, right, the microphone attaches underneath the clamp here. Right, so if I need to change the microphone out, then I've got to pull this unit out, undo the clamps, change the microphone, and then reinsert it into the helmet. I had to do that a couple of times, and it can be, quite a pain to do that. Well, on the new units, they've improved things. So on the new PackTalk cradles, right, the microphone connects a little bit differently. Right, you can see there's a long wire lead. It doesn't connect underneath the base anymore. Now it connects out here, and you just have a little plug that you undo. So if you need to change your microphone out from this boom type to the type that would go in a full face helmet, then it's easy enough to do. You don't have to remove the So in addition to giving a lead here for the microphone, they've also given you quite a bit of lead that allows you to plug your speakers in, right? So here's the speaker plug, rather than being on the base itself like the old units. You didn't have to take the base out to change out the speakers, but now this probably makes it a little bit easier to get to. However, I don't really know what you're supposed to do with this, right? If you stick it in up underneath your helmet, then you've got this big plug that sits underneath your helmet liner. And I don't know, that didn't seem like it was going to be very comfortable to me. And at least on my Shoei there, I really didn't have any place to hide it. So what I ended up doing was I ended up kind of tucking it underneath here, right? I'll show you on my helmet. All right, so if I come in close here, you can see where my speakers hook into this unit. So I've got that plug sitting right up underneath here, and that seemed to be the easiest place to put it, rather than trying to cram it into some cubby hole that I wasn't going to be able to feel when I had the helmet on. So also here, this plug, that goes to my speakers. And what I've done is, in this helmet anyway, because I'm going to be taking this one to Alaska, I upgraded the speakers inside it. Rather than use the speakers from Cardo, which are adequate for, voice communication, but they're not very good. If you like to listen to music, then you need to upgrade your speaker system, right? Get a more bass response, more treble in there, they're much better speakers. So the ones that I used are, that said the Torque X Pro. They cost about $80. But if you like to listen to music, they're well worth it. So as far as price goes on these new PackTalk units, I've seen them out there listed for somewhere around $456 all the way up to $492. That's for the 2-unit pair. I've seen the a single unit itself probably runs for around $280. Right, so they're a little more expensive than the older units. You can still find some of those G9X out there. I just saw a set, I think that was for $389, that was on Amazon. So if you're interested in that, you can still find them. But I also noticed that places like RevZilla are starting to run closeouts on those units. So I think everything's going to be moving over to these before too long. Now, I haven't had a chance to use these a whole lot because we're winding down with our riding season, unfortunately, here. I've been able to use it going back and forth to work to listen to music, and the quality with the new speakers is just much, much better. Also, you have the volume that's right here on this little roller. Much easier to turn up and down than using those buttons that were on the older units. So far, I'm really impressed. I think that this is an overall easier unit to install, easier unit to use. We'll see when we head up to Alaska about the stability of the network and all those things, and I'll come back and I'll tell you that. I'm going to be quite honest with you. But so far, I like them. I'm impressed with what they've done. All right, gang, that's it for today. Please remember, if you're going to buy something from Twisted Throttle, do so by linking through my website. Help us keep these videos coming. And also, we've got a fundraiser going for our trip to Alaska. We're donating to Homes for Our Troops, a great organization that builds custom homes for severely disabled vets. So please go to my website at www.livingofftheslab.com and click that donate link. Again, just help us out. Anything that you can offer is greatly appreciated. Thank you.